We spoke about Leicester crashing out the FA Cup. Their FA Cup. They were the holders, and they crashed out to Nottingham Forest, who were magnificent under Steve Cooper. Now, post-match, Brendan Rodgers spoke to Be In Sport, and he said, look, some of these players I've got, now they're playing for their futures.
We've got players missing, of course, and everything else, but I've seen signs within it, that this chapter, for me, with the team coming towards an end, because you see that lack of hunger in some of our players, and unfortunately you have to stay hungry in this game, and for me, the way you show that is by your physicality, and today our physicality was nowhere near it. I mentioned the other day in my press about needing big changes in this squad, and that's the reason why today you need to have hunger, and we don't have enough players at this moment in time that have that hunger to do the basics well.
What's that telling you, Simon?
I'm a big admirer of Brendan's, and I have been for some time. I like the way he engages. I think he's a very clever media operator and a very, very savvy football manager. When I listened to the interview after the game about their very worrying signs, I didn't really like the texture and tone of what he was saying, because he's responsible for alleviating the worry. The worry shouldn't manifest itself in an FA Cup tie as the holders of a competition against a Championship side, albeit in good nick. The worrying sign should be their inability to be able to perform in the Premier League. These games should take care of themselves, and he, as the manager, and his coaching staff should be able to be alert in real time to their players and what's going on, and rather than use it as an opportunity. I know they've got Liverpool coming up this week, and I know they've got West Ham, so they've got two very difficult games, and maybe he's preparing people's mindset for how worse it's going to get, because if they play anything vaguely resembling a whiff of what they played against Nottingham Forest, then they're going to get beat by several goals against Liverpool and West Ham. I understand the dynamic of the physicality in competing, but I just felt that it was flaky of Brendan. I think if he felt this chapter needs to be closed, then he would have been able to see this some time ago. This won't have been a surprise to him. We know that he's got injuries. We know that they've had a depleted staff and a debilitated squad, because that will give them a challenge, and he probably doesn't want to keep rehearsing the same lines. When I looked at it, I thought, not sure I'm having a lot of that. I understand what you're trying to impart. It really should have just been, that was a deplorable performance, unacceptable from the FA Cup holders against a team which we give a lot of commendation to, but we as a Premier League club should be able to come down here and deal with that.
So if you were the Leicester owner, you'd have him in this morning saying, no, it's not good enough.
Maybe it was a little message to the owners. A little.
Yeah, well, of course it was.
I think we can overanalyse certain words and phrases when a manager comes out and starts speaking,
But they do it for a living, Dan. This is part of their job now.
I know they do, but there was a degree of healthy honesty about what he was saying, and I quite like that sometimes, instead of this overprotective nature of players. I don't mind exposing players to a bit of public criticism, as long as you've had it to your face first. I think he made a great point on the way you portray the hunger in your game. Sometimes it's not always about being brilliant, it's about being competitive, and I think if you look in the middle of the pitch, it was a great example of two players, super talented, and Didi, who's been a really good player for Leicester for a long time, but had lots of muted rumours about maybe going somewhere else. Tielemans as well, he scored the winner in the cup final, people talking about him being moving to the next level. And sometimes players, I think I was guilty of it to a degree, you get in a comfort zone, and you go on the pitch sometimes and think you're just going to turn it on without really doing the basics. Those two in the middle of the pitch were a shining example of that yesterday. So I actually didn't mind him coming out and laying some of the blame at their door. And I think what he's saying is, and he mentioned briefly the pre-match interview that he did regarding the window, and he was talking about refreshing, wanting, and a need. This is where I'm saying he might be. He was, the thing to the owners. There sounded a little bit of frustration is the word in his voice about not doing anything in January. But he did say that we've been on a journey for a few years, and actually this summer there's going to be a lot of movement in it. I don't know if you've heard the interview he did before the game. So it wasn't as if the result against Forest has triggered him into silly comments. I think he's obviously seen this coming a little bit.
For sure. But he's parking his tanks on their lawn. But there's no doubt, Simon. Listen to some. This is also what he added to it. He said some of the players, they boasted their legend as players. They won the FA Cup, and that might be it, but it's not for me, and not what I want to achieve here and do here. For some, it's maybe everything they could have dreamt of. In other words, that's fine. If you think you've gone as far as you can go, then I don't think that. We're going to go further. You might not be coming. I think that's the message he's sent to these guys, and he's quite damn right to say it to them.
But team reflects leadership, and it's okay. I'm all in the camp, more in the camp than anybody probably in this room, to make players accountable for their individual performances, outcomes, and their attitude, full stop. But there is an element of team reflects leadership. If the team is under-aroused, under-motivated, and thinks it's arrived before its journey is finished, right, then that's down to the manager. And the manager should have been able to see the telltale signs back in the summer. He should have been able to have the leverage and the juice to be able to push the pressure onto his owners, to be able to change it up in January. They've got dumped out of the Europa League, right? Inauspiciously. Yeah, they haven't turned up many times in the Premier League. Brendan is a first-class manager, and I expect first-class observations from a first-class manager. And what I saw there was a set of circumstances which is veering into typical manager speak, which is ultimately, this is everybody else's fault but mine.
Right.
I've got owners that haven't supported me. I've got players that don't get the bigger picture and think they've arrived. And I need to change it up. That's fine. That's part of your job. But in the real one, here and now, your team, under your direction, should not go out on a Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon and lose 4-1 to Nottingham Forest in the FA Cup that you hold.
I hear what Simon's saying there, Danny. What this needs, in my view, and who am I? But in my view, Rodgers needs to say as well, and incidentally, I need to look in the mirror too.
Well, I think he will be. You mean just admitting his own role in it? Well, by being...
Don't abdicate responsibility.
No, but there's always...
Simon's right. He's a big part of it.
But he'll be very aware of that. He's an intelligent guy. The fact he didn't say it doesn't mean he's not looking in the mirror and thinking, maybe...
But why not say it?
Because sometimes you have to put the blame where you think it's most relevant, and I think I agree with Brendan in that, irrelevant of what injuries you got, irrelevant of whether you want to freshen it up, irrelevant of whether the owners have backed you or not, going away to a championship team side, whoever he played, he could have picked Chowdhury or Brighton, players like that who know what it's about. But you can't tell me Ndidi, Tielemans, Amati, those type of players don't know what's coming. All he had to do was show them the Arsenal game. That's the player's responsibility. Have some pride, have some discipline, have some gumption. The minute where they went 2-0 down, the game did flip on its head. The weird thing is, if you watch the game back, I watched the first half. Up until the Forest goal, there was nothing in the game. That minute where they lost the 2, they lost their heads. Nobody took leadership. Nobody took control out there. Nobody calmed it down. Then they go a third. Could have gone 4. It was all over the place.
How can that be, though? From one of the most established Premier League clubs, we all respect and love them, and yet they've fallen apart.
Well, I think we're veering up. I think there's less leaders on the pitch than we've had, because we've become. I think footballers have got so.
But those leaders were evident against Liverpool on the 28th of December. This was about an approach to a game that he is in part responsible for. The approach to this game was wrong. The approach before the game was clearly wrong. The approach during the game, the reaction to adversity was wrong. But when they played Liverpool at the end of December, they were all for it, all up for it, all involved with it, because it was playing Liverpool. Now, that's a mindset that will be engendered by the manager.
Well, it's always a balance, Simon, between the manager creating a mindset and the player having that capability of motivating yourself to play games which aren't obvious. I mean, if you can't get yourself going for a Liverpool game, you're never going to, are you? The true reflection of a player's mentality and his quality is in a game like Forest away, when the pitch ain't great, the wind's blowing, and you're 2-0 down.
But how could these players not get themselves going for that game at the weekend, Danny?
I think
they're the holders against Forest, who they should beat. They should eliminate Forest.
They should, but then we could go through we could go through Bournemouth, Man United, we could go through West Ham's performance at Kidderminster. I mean, it's the FA Cup. It's what happens. The pitches, the crowd, all these things come into play. We're highlighting Leicester because they've won it. They've gone out a whimper, and the way they lost the game.
Yes,
you can lose. We're highlighting Leicester because their manager has given us a look behind the curtain of the Wizard of Oz, where someone's pulling the bells and whistles whilst other people think there's a big noise coming, and it's all manufactured. We're talking about an approach and an outlook and a disposition, and I understand the dynamics, but West Ham got past Kidderminster, right? Bournemouth are a championship side, so these things happen. We're talking about a Premier League football club that should be able to manage it. And if he can't look at his players, part of the job, right, is to look at your players and understand what they're thinking, why they're thinking, get the zeitgeist and what's going on in that dressing room to know how to pick. That's your job these days, right? It's not so much on the grass, part of it, but it's to really understand the psyche of the players. You can't then say, when you've just got your head handed to you in the most inauspicious fashion by a very good Nottingham Forest side that compound how bad you were, that actually the problem is bigger. and that there's a new chapter that needs to be brought about.
Well, you can say it if you're trying to provoke a reaction upstairs.
But you can also own the outcome yourself and manage with what you've got. And if you get beat in the FA Cup because it's one of those games, they didn't have one of those games. No. They were destroyed, dismantled, and embarrassed by Nottingham Forest.
So what you're saying, I think what you're saying is that there should be a bit more accountability from himself rather than putting it on the players. Is that what you mean?
I just think the whole messaging about the next chapter, that's a different conversation that happens somewhere else. You need to account for the pitiful nature of that performance, not talk about the bigger picture. The here and now is what you have to manage. If you couldn't manage the here and now, then you should have done what it took to change the direction of travel, either back in the summer by supplementing the squad, and you'll say he couldn't foresee the injuries, right? Yeah. Well, then okay, by having the juice to be able to change the dynamics in January. He's done neither. If you don't have the juice with these people after winning the FA Cup, then you have to look at yourself as a manager and go, well, when am I going to have it? When absolute adversity. Have I got to prove to these guys that we are really miles off now before I get any support?
You know, players, Danny, this Monday morning, how do these Leicester players feel? Are they bothered about what Brendan said?
I would hope so. I would hope the majority are. I would be amazed if there weren't a few changes.
The
next
individuals
game.
won't think it's specific to them unless you name them
and
tell them.
He would have.
Okay.
I think he's got a bit about him. My understanding is that he'll have named them, no problem.
Okay. Well, our times are changing at Leicester because Brendan's gone for it with the players.
I just want to give one example. So, Moisey's done great at West Ham. We've eulogised a lot about West Ham this season, and rightly so. But that performance was really bad. And the only reason they stayed in the FA Cup is because he had a wonderful player, Declan Rice, who took the game by the scruff of the neck, not tactically, not because Moyes motivated him, because he's self-motivated. He said, I'm not going out of the cup, I'm going to do something about it. Right? So sometimes players override. I'm all for managers dictating the philosophy of the team, and I think they play a crucial role.
Yeah.
I'm not one of these just talks about, it's just about players. It's not. The manager is really important. Simon's right. But sometimes in a cup tie against lesser opposition, players have to stand irrelevant to tactics. It's just who's got the balls. Declan Rice has kept West Ham in the FA Cup because that performance was horrendous.
Yeah.
And they deserve to go out. Even Moisey said it. But that's not because the manager motivated Declan Rice, because he's a great player. And Leicester their players didn't turn up. And sometimes it's right to put the spotlight on the players. Sometimes, not all the time.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.